Well, today it's working, so that's good news.
Did you hear the news that Chandrika Tandon?
We're live now, and we are waiting. We're going to start our presentation in just a moment. Thank you very much. Swami Atmavidyanandaji is on his way. There's this layer on the TV. Oh, you need to put that in? It's just nothing.
We're not going to see pictures for a little while, so
Okay.
yeah, so I can read what I'm
Okay, all right. Let's get you in.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Bharavahai Ekasminavadi Jamasti Hare Vishamahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahma protect us, may He guide us, and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om peace, peace, peace. And good evening. So our topic is patterns in the universe, archetypal patterns in the universe. And this idea is intimately involved in the ideas of the microcosm and the macrocosm. So I'm going to read a quote from the Chandogya Upanishad first, where it says, within the city of Brahman, which is the body, there is the heart, and within the heart there is a little house. This house has the shape of a lotus, and within it dwells that which is to be sought after, inquired about, and realized. What then is that which dwelling within this little house, this little lotus of the heart, is to be sought after, inquired about, and realized? As large as the universe outside, even so large is the universe within the lotus of the heart. Within it are heaven and earth, the sun, the moon, the lightning, and all the stars. What is in the macrocosm is in this microcosm. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, in the gospel, there is this particular section. Oh. Mahima reads from the Yati Panchaka, where it says, I am she, the Divine Mother, in whom the illusion of the universe of animate and inanimate things is seen as in magic, and in whom the universe shines, being the play of her mind. I am she, the embodiment of consciousness, who is the self of the universe, the only existence, knowledge, and bliss. When the master heard the line, I am she, the embodiment of consciousness, he said with a smile, whatever is in the microcosm is also in the macrocosm. And Swami Vivekananda expresses the sentiments this way. There are laws, very fine, which are behind the physical laws as we know them. That is to say, there are no such realities as a physical world, a mental world, and a spiritual world. Whatever is one. Let us say it is sort of a tapering existence. The thickest part is here, and it tapers and becomes finer and finer. The finest is what we call spirit, and the grossest, the body. And just as it is here in the microcosm, it is exactly the same in the macrocosm. There are two worlds, the microcosm and the macrocosm, the internal and the external. We get truth from both of these by means of experience. The truth gathered from the internal experience is psychological, metaphysical, and religion. From external experience, the physical sciences. Now, a perfect truth should be in harmony with the experiences in both these worlds. The microcosm must bear testament to the macrocosm, and the macrocosm to the microcosm. Physical truth must have its counterpart in the internal world, and the internal world must have its verification outside. The microcosm and the macrocosm are built on exactly the same plan. And in the microcosm, we know only one part, the middle part. We know neither the subconscious nor the superconscious. We just know the conscious only. And in our little universe, this human mind, we see a thought arise. When it arises, we do not know. And when it disappears, where it goes, we know not either. The macrocosm and the microcosm are, as it were, in the same groove, passing through the same stages, vibrating in the same key. And he goes on to say, I shall try to bring before you the Hindu idea that religions do not come from without, but from within. It is my belief that religious thought is in human beings' very constitution, so much so that it is impossible for him to give up religion until he can give up his mind and body, until he can give up thought and life. And then he goes on to say, adjust the microcosm, which is in your power to do, and the macrocosm will adjust itself for you. It is like the hydrostatic paradox. One drop of water can balance the universe. We cannot see outside what we are not inside. And then he draws the analogy with music. In music, because of overtones, all the notes of the scale and more are implied in just one note. What is called your mind is only a bit of this mahat, caught in the trap of the brain. And the sum total of all minds caught in the meshes of brains is what you call samashti, the aggregate, the universal. Here we were, each one of us, a microcosm, and the world taken all together is the macrocosm. Each atom is composed of the same material as the whole universe. If you know one lump of clay, you know the whole universe. Man is the most representative being in the universe, the microcosm, a small universe in himself. There's a lot of stuff in this universe. We've got about 7 or 8 different entire universes manifesting right here in this room. Just as nature is unity and variety, an infinite variation in the phenomenal, as in and through all these variations of the phenomenal runs the infinite, the unchangeable, the absolute unity. So it is with every person. The microcosm is but a miniature repetition of the macrocosm. In spite of all these variations, I and through them all runs this eternal harmony, and we have to recognize this. Now, Atmavidyananda, another direct disciple that lectured extensively in the United States for a couple of decades, he puts things this way. As by knowing the chemical properties of one drop of water, we know the properties of all water, or wherever it appears, so by knowing who and what we are in reality, we shall realize the final truth. Human beings are the epitome of the universe. That which exists in the macrocosm is to be found in the microcosm. Therefore, the knowledge of one's true self is the highest of all knowledge. One real self is divine and one with God. Our true self is divine and one with God. And he says, concentrate your mind on the different functions of your body, and you will see new revelations coming to you. You will understand the laws of nature, because whatever is in your body is universal. You will understand the laws of nature, because whatever is in your body is universal. You have nothing more or less than what exists in the universe. You are part and parcel of the universe. So when you study one minute particle of matter, study it carefully. And by this study, you will study the whole universe. Because the same forces and the same laws are working in the microcosm as working in the whole universe. And of course, this is quite literally true. We know now, of course, that all matter is nothing but energy, and energy just takes different forms. Energy can change from one form to another. So literally everything in the universe, every atom in the universe is nothing but energy. And we've talked earlier about how the electron is nothing but energy. There's not a particle with an electrical charge. It's simply the energy required to see the infinite as small. Now, Atmavidyananda goes on and says, man is the microcosm and the universe is the macrocosm. My master Sri Ramakrishna used to say it this way: what exists in the microcosm also exists in the macrocosm. So over and over again, we find this principle. And it's, of course, not unique to Hinduism. There's the old Hermetic law of correspondence. As above, so below. And in the Bible, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Those are both the same idea, put in very different terms. Now, this also involves the concept of an involution and an evolution. In order to understand this idea of microcosm and macrocosm, Vivekananda points out that it's a series of involutions and evolutions. So basically, the whole universe is involved and then it evolves out again. And so this primordial Brahman evolves into a universe and it can involve back into its primordial state. And Ramakrishna says all elements finally merge in Akasha. And again, at the time of creation, Akasha evolves into Mahat, and Mahat into Ahamkara. And in this way, the whole world system is evolved. It is a process of involution and evolution. So there are these two aspects, the big and the small, the subtle and the gross. And what we want to do is figure out how we can experience how we, the little human being, actually does manifest the whole universe within ourselves. Now, we are told that Brahman has this innate power called Maya to manifest this apparent universe. So one of the spiritual concepts we're going to want to model is, how does this infinite, undivided, unchanging Brahman manifest? Or at least apparently manifest? Or, in simple terms, how does the one appear to become the many? And what does this process look like? So that's one of the mysteries we'd like to solve. Now, in this idea of involution and evolution, it's not surprising that the microcosm would reflect the macrocosm. Maya manifests in a way that the whole is reflected in every part. Now, this might seem impossible. How can the infinite be reflected in the finite? But I have a little mathematical example that I think I've shared before, but it deserves repeating here in this particular context. And the idea is that we can reflect, if you take a number line, we can reflect over 1 all the numbers that go past 1 back into the numbers from 0 to 1. So you map 1 onto itself, you map 2 onto 0.5, you map 3 onto 0.33, 4 into 0.25, etc. And all the numbers in between would correspondingly go to their corresponding point. So here's a little graph. Oh, what happened to our TV? We decided to shut down here. All right. We have to go through this rigmarole again. Let's see here. There we go.
Ta-da.
All right, so backing up a tiny bit. So the first column is just the counting numbers and their reciprocals. If we just take the reciprocals of all the counting numbers, you get a bunch of fractions. And you can take the reciprocal of any number. So any number from 1 to infinity has a reciprocal, and it will map into a number from 0 to 1. So all of these numbers get mapped into just this tiny little space from 0 to 1. So an infinite number line going out to infinity can be mirror imaged.
We can't see that. Maybe I should. Does it matter?
Is it too low? Oh, turn the light off. Okay, yeah, you can turn the light off.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Still can't see it.
That's
okay.
better?
No. You want the light on? Is that better for you?
No, it's all right.
Okay. 'Cause that's
All
really
right, I think, yeah. Now, this microcosm and macrocosm gets expressed in many ways. And one of the ways is that even in this outer world, we see reflections of this pattern where the patterns are repeated over and over and over again. For example, if you take a fern, and this fern has this general pattern. You've got a stem, and you've got these various leaves coming out from the top. But if you take just one of these things coming out of the stem, it has the same pattern. You got a basic stem, and you got things going out on either side. Now just take one of these little pieces, and you got the same thing. You got a central stem, and you got little pieces going out from each side. So literally, you have this microcosm of this basic pattern. If you could see the veins in those little tiny petals, it would follow the same pattern. And so just by stage, the evolution of the fern's growth gives it this pattern. When you have self-repeating patterns, they're called fractals. And there are a lot of examples of fractals. I think I've got some later on here in this lecture that we will show you. But fractals are basically the things that when a pattern is repeated over and over again, and a little piece looks like the whole thing or a bigger piece. And perhaps some of you are familiar with the famous Mandelbrot set, which is a self-similar image. But that's a whole other lecture. We could do a whole lecture on just fractals if we wanted to. All right, now this idea of everything being reflected in some smaller part is often used in alternative healing techniques. For example, some people will use the system called iridology, where they look at your eye, the iris of your eye, and the theory is that the energies of your body are mapped into your iris. And so if they want to know where your energies are not flowing properly, they look at your iris and they might see some little dark spots, and say if it's over here, they would think it might be your kidneys. If it's over here, it might be your thymus, and so forth and so on. So this is an example where your iris is a microcosm reflection of your macrocosm. And there are several healing techniques like this. For example, perhaps you've had a foot massage from a zonal therapist. A zonal therapist knows that your whole body is mapped on to your foot. And so if they want to help your heart, they might massage this point. If they want to up the energy in your pituitary gland, they might rub these points on your big toe, and so forth and so on. And if you rub your own feet and you find someplace that's particularly sore, that might indicate an energy blockage to that particular organ that is mapped onto your foot. So again, microcosm and macrocosm. In this case, we're not talking about the whole cosmos. We're just talking about our own little bodies and how each piece of our little body is reflected in another piece. The ear acupuncturist uses this model. The inverted fetus is mapped into your ear. And so if the ear acupuncturist wants to activate, again, a particular part of your body, maybe you're having trouble with the lungs, he would put a little ball bearing there and tape this little ball bearing into that particular spot in your ear. And that sends energy to that particular part of the body. And in a sense, every cell of your body has all the information for your entire body in the DNA code. So this DNA code that has this double spiraling helix here contains all the information for all the parts of your body wrapped up in that code. Now, what I want to do next is have us intuitively figure out what some of the archetypal shapes are in the universe by looking at a lot of different religious symbols. And so we're going to look through these symbols, and the first one here is this nice Christmas wreath that has this nice circular shape. Here's a pine cone that has kind of a spiraling energy to it. They've even kind of outlined that for you in an area. So pine cones, of course, symbols in Christmas. Here's a lovely rose window, a stained glass window from a cathedral that has a central point that radiates out. Here's another one, and you can see that this one has kind of miniature stained glass windows off to the side. You've got one main one with a central point, and then each one of these is also got a central point with little things. So you've got a microcosm and macrocosm going there as well. In the other room, of course, Suda made us some nice religious symbols around the world. And so we have religious symbols, of course, the most well-known are things like the cross. I forget whose symbol this is. Anybody remember?
That's Sikh.
That's Sikh,
That
okay.
looks like the word Allah,
Okay.
you know, the word for God in Arabic.
Oh, okay. And of course, we've got this circle here. We've got a nice straight line here. We've got a circle here. Got a palm with a circle here. This is an Egyptian symbol here.
It's a Persian, Zoroastrian.
Zoroastrian? Okay. So you know your symbols. Very good. I thought those are the wings of...
Egyptians have them too, you're right.
Yeah.
But that particular one is Zoroastrian.
Wow. Okay. It's good we've got somebody that knows. All right. So here we have a circle and a pentagram here. Here we have like a cross with a circle in the middle. Here we also have kind of a cross with a flame on top. This is the I Ching symbol with the yin yang symbol in the middle, and you have the I Ching symbols around the edge in kind of a circular pattern, and so that forms an octagon. This is kind of a mandala here. We have the Star of David here, two interlocking triangles, a Shinto shrine here with a nice straight line here, a nice curved moon-shaped line there, and kind of an arch here. And we have the Islamic crescent moon and star, another very small little mandala, of course the Om symbol. And I think I have another picture of symbols, probably going to be a repetition of these. Yeah, pretty much a repetition of the ones that we saw. So there are a lot of recurring kinds of geometric shapes that we see in these patterns. And if we look at some religious sites, we see here a religious site where we have, again, a circle, a cross, and a circle in the middle. We see archaeological finds where they find these spirals on the walls. More spirals carved into the rocks. That's a new Grange to the passageway. More spirals engraved in the rocks. The Hohoken site. Here are some yantras. We have the Ganesh yantra, the Durga yantra, the Shri yantra, the Tara yantra, the Shri Chakra yantra, the yantra Bhagala Mukhi, the yantra Batanji, and the yantra Tripura Sundari, and the yantra Kali. So these are yantras. They all have this basic square shape with 4 portals, and we can see lots of circles, lots of triangles, lotus petals. That came up in the Chandogya quote, the lotus petals in the heart. All right, here's an Orphic egg. We have an egg symbol and a spiraling snake symbol. And in this Orphic tradition, the upper half was what became the heavens. The silver egg holds the god Thames, and the lower half became the earth, and it symbolizes creation and the beginning of the universe, and it represents the union of opposites, and it becomes a symbol of the Orphic mysteries. The Orphic egg myth may have originated in Egypt and then found its way into Greek through Greek thought via trade routes. It symbolizes creation and has roots in the Orphic traditions of ancient Greece. And of course, the egg is a symbol in many cultures for the primordial beginning of creation. Here we have a Shiva lingam, and the lingam is basically kind of an egg shape, really. You can also think of it as a pillar shape. It's sitting in a lotus yoni. You have a circle on top. You have a serpent here, and it's being held on a base with a little, probably Nandi there. Here's another example of the yin-yang symbol that we can study more closely. And in this yin-yang symbol, this curve is part of a circle that would continue on like this, and this circle would continue on like that. And these 2 circles represent that even though the totality is divided into a duality, there are aspects of each half in the other. So this half has an aspect of this, and this half has an aspect of that. So it's a very interesting symbol with lots of symbolism in it. Here is the cross, and what kind of Christianity would this cross be from? Well, there's no Jesus on it, so it would be the Protestants. Protestants don't put Jesus on the cross. All right, this is not specifically religious, but this is the, I forgot the name of it. What's the name of this?
The DNA pharma.
Yeah, it has a name. Can't think of it. All right. It'll come to me. It all just suddenly pop into my head. But anyway, you have again the double spiraling snakes and the wings here. Here's another Easter egg that's been decorated, and look at how it's been decorated. It's got little petals, and it's got petals here. It's got a central point. It's got little spirals, and it's inside of a square. All right, so take note of all of those nice shapes. Here is the god Ptah fashioning the cosmic egg out of which he's going to create the universe. So he's literally like on a potter's bench, and he's fashioning this cosmic egg. And here's the golden cosmic egg in the swirling chaos of the universe. And he's going to fashion this out of that chaotic energy and create something which is more organized. Here's, of course, Stonehenge. Again, we have nice circles, and we have all these straight line rocks that were used to form these sections of the round sacred site. Here is the Ouroboros, the snake swallowing its own tail, representing the infinity of the circle. Here's a double one, where the snake is entwined twice in order to swallow its tail, and it reminds us of the infinity symbol that we have in mathematics. Here's another sacred site with interlocking circles. Here is the Eye of Horus. Come on, Eye of Horus, cooperate. And again, we have kind of this almond shape here. We have two concentric circles. We have a nice spiral. We have nice straight lines. So, and here are many, many different kinds of crosses. There are so many different kinds of crosses. You could give a whole lecture on just crosses and the symbolism of each different cross. But basically, of course, we have a vertical line and a horizontal line, and they can be decorated in various ways. These have these kind of almond-shaped twirls at the end of each one. There's often some designation of this central point where the two axes meet. This one has a larger circle around here. This one has a circle as well. This one has a circle. That's fairly common. And all sorts of intricate swirls. Look at all those little almond-shaped things with the two intertwining wave-like patterns there. Two more crosses. And then we have probably the most beautiful symbols of the various mandalas. And at the end of this series of talks that will be over the next 3 or 4 months, we will be making our own mandalas. Just depends on how quickly we pick up those skills as to whether it'll be three lectures or 4 lectures. But mandalas are, again, pictorial diagrams that represent a universe, you could say, and the universe is coming from a central point and flowers out, often with petals and intricate wavy patterns of design. We'll talk a lot more about mandalas later. Here's a Native American sand painting. They also have the same idea of starting a pictorial image of the universe with a central point and a circle around it, and then at least 4 axes, sometimes 8. This is the symbol for the throat chakra, which has a many-petaled lotus, a downward pointing triangle, and a little circle inside and a big circle outside. This one's inscribed, that one's circumscribed. Here is a painting that has the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus inside this interesting shape. Now we're going to find out what this interesting shape is a little later on. It's a very special shape, and we've seen it already many times. We've seen this kind of almond-shaped or petal-shaped coming up in many of these symbols. This is a symbol from the Voodoo tradition from the Caribbean. These are called Vebe diagrams. They often will have a cross-like structure adorned with little star-like figures. And so what we're finding is that there are some basic archetypal shapes which seem to come up over and over again in our religious symbols. And of course, the most primary ones are the basic things in geometry: points, lines, planes, and circles. But beyond that, what we have are your basic circle, your basic square, your basic triangle, your star, and your cross. Those seem to come up the most often, plus a few others which we'll talk about in more detail later. But these archetypal patterns occur over and over again in our religious symbols, and we'll see that they also occur over and over again in Mother Nature. The circle becomes a symbol for eternity because it goes around forever and there's no place to start and no place to stop. So it represents wholeness and perfection, fluidity, completeness and divinity. The square represents stability, rigidity, being grounded, being earth-like, imperfect in some sense because it's earthly and kind of a base. We make bases for things that are usually square. The triangle represents a balance, a synthesis of opposites. You can think of these 2 points being representing opposites and the synthesis being on the top. So it represents the union of opposites, sharpness, and the intellect. Sometimes it also represents fire, the fire element. It's also the strongest shape. If you had a square, if you had anybody that's worked with wood and you put 4 pieces of wood together like this, it's not very strong.
Mm-hmm.
You can push it over. It can collapse. If you've got a screw on each one, it'll just fall down. That's why when they build buildings, they put shear walls. They put a piece of plywood here so that it can't do that. Or I've even seen some new buildings, they're getting smart with the earthquake standard, where they put some diagonals or a triangle periodically in the structure in order to keep it from collapsing in an earthquake. Because so this triangle represents strength as well. And we're going to see more things about this balance of harmony and union of opposites and so forth later on. This is a kind of a summary lecture of what we're going to get over the next 3 months. The star symbol, and of course stars can be occasionally 4-pointed, but usually 5-pointed or 6-pointed, but you can even have 8-pointed stars or 9-pointed stars, 7-pointed stars, but 5 and 6 are by far the most common. It's interesting when you look through a telescope, you often see the stars kind of as 4-pointed stars, but that's just an artifact of the way the telescope's built. Sometimes you'll see 6-pointed stars. If the diagonal is held with 3 points, then you're going to see six points on your stars. It's just because the diffraction pattern from the interference of the things holding up the diagonal mirror create those patterns. And the cross. Oh, I didn't talk about the star. The star often represents spirit, sovereignty, achievement. You know, we put stars on people's papers when they do well. Openness and oneness. Several of them, especially the 5 and 6-pointed stars, also represent, again, a microcosm and macrocosm type thing because they are self-replicating images, which we will show later on. The cross, I usually like to think of the cross as representing the union of heaven and earth. We have the heavenly or the earthly plane as the horizontal and the heavenly axis as the vertical. And so the central point is where they meet, and that's why the Catholics put Jesus there. Jesus is your way from this earthly plane of accessing the heavenly plane. So he's also, of course, a source of power and authority and strength, focus, and will. So those are some of the symbolisms of these basic shapes. Now, one author talks about the 4 dimensions of geometry being the point, line, plane, and sphere, or 1 dimension, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, and 4 dimensions, you could say, or no dimensions, I could say. No dimensions, 1 dimension, 2 dimensions, and 3 dimensions would probably be more accurate. And this author equates the point with concentration, the line with connection. If you have 2 points, you connect them with a line. So it represents connection. The plane represents circulation. You can move about in a plane. And the sphere is the unity of expansion. And so you can draw parallels with meditation techniques. You focus on a point with great concentration. Then you make a connection with a deity or some aspect of God, some Godhead. Then you might do some sort of meditation about that particular deity, feel like you're in communion with that deity, and then your consciousness expands from your little self into the infinite self. So there's a correspondence really between the basic elements of geometry and meditation practice. Now, as I mentioned, these shapes are archetypal. And if they're archetypal, that means they're going to show up in nature. So here's an example of that almond shape with a basic line going across it there. This is a diatom. It's a little microscopic organism. You ever heard of diatomaceous earth? Diatomaceous earth is made up of the remains of all these little creatures. Diatoms come in many shapes. Hopefully it's somewhere I've got the other shapes, but it's not here. All right. This is a diffraction pattern made from a crystal, and we can see lots of circles, concentric circles. We can see radiating patterns going out, some square-like patterns and some roughly triangular shapes, and a big circular shape. It looks like a mandala, doesn't it? Here's another diffraction pattern. Oops. Back here. It goes fast. Again, we have, this time we have a six-sided pattern with a circle here and kind of a, again, those little circular, semicircular arches, which create kind of a petal-like picture. And I mean, there are lots of different diffraction patterns, and they all have interesting geometric shapes. The spiral comes up, again, talk about microcosm to the macrocosm. Here's a spiral on a macrocosmic scale, a satellite picture of a hurricane. I should have put all the spirals together. Anyway, this is a picture of concentric circles formed when a drop of water falls into a still body of water. And this represents the common image of a rod and a circle, which we saw in the Shiva Lingam, where we had the Shiva Lingam sitting in the yoni. This is spirals created when two fluids that are immiscible, they don't mix, fall. Well, if you drop, say, a colored drop of oil into, say, water, they won't mix. And so then you get these spiraling little arms coming out as the drop falls into the water. Here's this nautilus seashell, and you can see a spiraling pattern in the nautilus seashell. Smoke, if you can take a picture of smoke rising from a chimney in still air, even though the air is still, it's going to spiral. The little cloud smoke chambers are going to spiral up. Even at a bigger scale, we have a spiraling galaxy. More seashells, lots of flowers and plants grow in these spiraling shapes. And we're going to talk about why all that is as time goes on here. This is a fern leaf, and look, we've got a big spiral, and we got these little spirals inside. Microcosm and macrocosm again. Here's a tornado. Here's some more fractals. Here's a image of a deciduous tree that's lost its leaves, so you can see its nice branching structure. So we've got the main branch with all the branches going out, but if you looked at one branch and then magnified it, it would look pretty much the same. And if you looked at one little branch on that branch, it would look pretty much the same. So microcosm in the macrocosm again. Snowflakes also have nice geometric shapes. They're six-sided because of the shape of the water molecule. And again, they often show kind of a fractal type image. This one's not intricate enough to show much of a fractal pattern. This one is a little more intricate, and we do see a fractal pattern where each arm here resembles one whole arm. Here are the veins in a leaf. And again, we get this kind of branch pattern in the veins. But if you could look at another section, like right in here, you get the same kind of branching pattern as you look further down in detail. So several examples of fractals in nature. Here's another example of a type of broccoli. And if you looked at this picture here, any one of these little ones on it would resemble this whole thing. And then down in there, if you looked at any one of these little individual pieces on this individual piece, it would look pretty much like this whole thing. So again, fractals in nature. All right, now we can create patterns that we see in religious symbols through energy vibrations. This is a picture of the Sri Yantra created by electronically vibrating and recording that vibrational energy. And it's amazing that, look, it's even got the little lotus-like blossoms on the side here. And it's got these little wavy lines. This was just created by energy vibrations. It wasn't an artist that did this. So these yogis obviously were able to intuit how energy vibrates in the universe. And so when you stare at a yantra, you're picking up that vibrational energy, and it's then resonating within inside you. And since you have the whole universe inside yourself, that part of the universe inside yourself will radiate with the energy of the yantra, in this case, the Sri Yantra. All right, so again, Mother Nature has many of the shapes that we find in geometry and in religious symbols. For example, the 5-pointed star. You see, I didn't get it. I had to hurry to get all this put together. I didn't get it put together in a very good order. Again, microcosm and macrocosm. We saw spirals in galaxies. We saw spirals in hurricanes. We saw them in tornadoes. And we saw them in seashells. Now, this is a picture of subatomic particles in a gas chamber. And when subatomic particles are created through an atom smasher, they fly off in different directions, but they fly off in curly patterns. Look at how they curl around. Every single one of them follows a spiral pattern. And so spirals are one of the most fundamental forms in nature. Here are some basic three-dimensional objects that have various geometric shapes in 3 dimensions. Here's a crystal structure that has hexagonal sides and rectangular faces. This has a rhomboid shape to it. These are like square cubes and so forth. So in 3 dimensions, Mother Nature also gives us these patterns. I think that's the end. Oh no, here, that should have been earlier. Okay, this is your picture of all these different diatoms. And look how they form pictures that look very much like some of these symbols we had. The triangles, circles, this almost looks like a honeycomb, doesn't it? And these nice arching patterns. So diatoms are fascinating little creatures, some of the most primitive and basic little creatures, and their skeletal remains form all these interesting patterns. So the point here is that all of these patterns occur in nature because they are archetypal. And so apparently the universe is made of these archetypal forms, which are basically geometric. And so let me continue here. Let's see. That with this. Light. Let me read this quote from this Jewish mystic, Eliezer Shore. Eliezer Shore says, religious life is symbolic life, devoted to uncovering the truths that lie beneath the surface of this world. Every symbol carries some inner meaning, whether simple or complex. In all cases, a symbol is an object whose content is greater than its form. Symbols demand that the viewer reconstruct the original message within himself. So that's exactly what we were saying with the yantra, like the Sri yantra. It radiates an energy, and it's not just a bunch of lines on a piece of paper. It's going to resonate within yourself, and so you, through meditation, have to reconstruct the message of that particular symbol. And it's going to be the same whether you're meditating on a cross, or you're meditating on a murti, or you're meditating on a mandala, or any other religious symbol. He goes on and says, when the world is understood as a symbol in the divine-human relationship, then its every detail is also seen to contain the potential for infinite meaning. So in other words, these symbols are the way that we have to connect with this divine macrocosmic realm, the universal realm, that we're not always in touch with. We want a greater connection to this divine realm, and this will happen through symbols. The beauty of contemplative life is that it allows a person time to engage in a pure act of self-reflection until the self yields up its secrets as the very expression of God's being. So symbolic life makes the difference really between feeling fulfilled and feeling empty in life. Now, throughout the ages, philosophers have intuited that numbers and geometric shapes are archetypal forms in nature. And many of our religious symbols have incorporated these basic ideas, as we've just seen. They incorporate crosses and circles and triangles and spirals and so forth. So what we find is that Brahman's power to manifest this apparent universe takes the help, you could say, of these archetypal forms. And so let's see, then all that. Let's see. I had some nice quotes from Pythagoras. Now, what did I do with them? Here we go. All right, so one of the earliest people that we have good records of that recognized the sacredness of geometry and numbers were some of the Greek philosophers, mostly Pythagoras and Plato. So Pythagoras says that everything was numbers. Numbers were both quantitative and qualitative. In other words, we normally think of numbers as just counting numbers and keeping track of stuff. But he said they also had qualities, and we're going to devote one part of a lecture on the qualities of numbers. He saw math as a study that purified the soul from its habitual way of looking at the world and its beliefs that the physical was the ultimate reality. He developed the ideal system of mathematics that functioned as an intellectual mandala that guides the soul to a vision of the structure of the heavens. He said that all learning is an awakening of the eternal ideas within the soul and the source of the unity and light that every true form of understanding insight brings. Patterns of numbers and geometric forms possess a clarity of truth, a perfect symmetry, and a magnificent beauty which reflects the true nature of the soul and hence the nature of the universe. He felt that they reflected the unchanging aspect of the universe, of the divine. Plotinus said that numbers existed before objects which were described by numbers. Even St. Augustine said that he saw in numbers an image of the absolute, and he studied the number symbolism of the Greeks. So I have more quotes, and now I've of course lost them, so we may have to save those for another day. time anyway, aren't we? What's that time? Yeah, all right, well, so almost done. But anyway, the idea was that they developed a system of sacred geometry. And Plato had above his academy that no one should enter here who does not know geometry. Well, we won't turn this into a geometry class, but his idea was geometry was so sacred and represented these archetypal energies that if you studied geometry and used sacred geometry, that you could intuit the nature of the universe behind. And when we get to our final topics in this series, and we're making mandalas, we're going to find that we're going to be using a lot of geometry. Mandalas are going to use a lot of circles, and circles are the symbol which most represents the unity of the totality, the whole universe in perfection. The circle is said to be the most perfect form. It has no edges, it has no corners, it has, so it is thought to be a perfect form. And so it's used a lot in mandalas. But as we saw in yantras, we also see a lot of triangles. And the two basic ways a triangle can be oriented are with the point up or the point down. And those are generally thought to represent the upward one, a masculine fire type energy, and the downward pointing one, a feminine and watery energy. And the union of the two gives you the manifest universe, just like Shiva and Shakti. You can't have a universe with just Shiva, and you can't have it with just Shakti. You have to have Shiva Shakti. You have to have Brahman and Maya. You have to have Purusha and Prakriti. Whatever kind of duality you want to look at, it takes two to tango, as they say. So what we're going to be doing in the next couple of months is looking at the symbolism in more detail about these different shapes, where that interesting almond-shaped figure comes from, and how it represents a womb of creation, and also some of the interesting aspects of numbers. Interestingly enough, that same figure is going to give us the first three irrational square roots. If you're a little familiar with mathematics, you know if you take a square root of a number, you get the number that if you multiply by itself, you get the number back. So, for example, the square root of 4 is 2, because 2 times 2 is 4. The square root of 9 is 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. The square root of 1 is itself, because 1 times 1 is 1. But if you try to find a rational number, meaning a number that can be expressed as a fraction, that will give you 2 when it's multiplied by itself, you can't do it. In fact, there's an apocryphal story that some Greek philosophers were on a ship coming back from Egypt, and one of them reported that he had proven that 2, the square root of 2, could not be expressed as a rational number. And the rest of them were so upset they threw him overboard. The thought that the Greeks had this idea that the universe should be totally rational. Well, they had to get over that idea, and then they discovered that these irrational numbers really symbolize part of the mystery of the universe. It's like Maya. Maya is an expression of Brahman, but an imperfect expression of Brahman. It's like the mirrors in a fun house. They don't perfectly reflect your reality when you look at yourself in those mirrors. And so Maya is an imperfect reflection of Brahman. And so the irrational numbers then were thought to somewhat reflect that reality, that there are really some things that are very obvious in the universe, like the diagonal of a unit square has the distance of a square root of 2, and you just can't perfectly express that in a rational number. And there's another symbol that we're going to look at that gives us that almond shape that's going to have not just the square root of 2, but the square root of 3, and the square root of 5. And then we're going to look at the thing that you've probably all heard of, the golden ratio. The golden ratio involves the square root of 5. The pentagon and the pentagram, which is the star formed in the pentagon, have all of those lengths in the pentagram relate to each other by this golden ratio. We'll find the golden ratio coming up in nature all over the place. So numbers, again, are symbolic and come up over and over again. So the numbers are archetypal. These geometric shapes are archetypal because they reflect the numbers. And all of them can give us an insight into the nature of how the microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm. All right, so that does it for today's first installment of Archetypal Patterns of the Universe. We'll talk about number symbolism and the various geometric shapes and sacred geometry. And then we're going to talk about making our own mandalas. All right, let's close with a chant, and then we can go for our prasad. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamivashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om peace, peace, peace.
Thank you, Swami. We'll see you all Saturday, and then the first Wednesday is the next lecture by Swamiji. Thank you all.
Do you have someone coming in the middle of the month?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, it's a busy month, starting with